what as well? Cars 4 is also a thing that's coming along, releasing later this decade? I can't believe Cars is making another comeback. If this transpires to be a 2026 release or something, it will be a full 20 years after the original. It's one of those movies that has no right to reach that age yet, though I think that's more of a me problem, to be honest, but you get what I mean. We're all getting old. Nonetheless, whilst controversial in the Pixar canon, this would actually make a lot of sense for Disney at large. And yes, it's been announced, it's confirmed, it's going on right now. So let's talk about what we know. Box office wise, the Cars franchise is one of Pixar's golden gems, and worldwide has grossed all sorts of money, like such as the following. The original 2006 movie, Cars. It's still a miracle that they managed to get away with that title, by the way. Anyway, it grossed $491.6 million. Straight away, right out of the gates, 20 years back practically, and they've already made $500 million. Following that, you then have $559.8 million from everyone's favorite Cars 2, this time with existential religious questions attached. And then finally, they capped off the trilogy with Cars 3, what a crazy title that one was, with just a more meager $383.9 million. So you'd think by that logic that the Cars money trajectory is kind of going downhill. It's certainly plateaued. Cars 2's done a massive dent on the whole franchise, also you'd think. And worldwide, that makes for a total of about $1.4 billion. Which, you know, it's a big successful number, sure, but some of you may not be so impressed by that, you know? They made $1 billion, whilst, case in point, just last year, the Super Mario Bros. Movie wasn't shy off that number by just itself. It didn't take 3 movies to get there. And in fact, even from just the perspective of Pixar alone, even if we shave down the categories of successful movies to just their little bubble, Toy Story 4 made over $1 billion alone, adding to a franchise total of over $3.3 billion. The Toy Story franchise makes way more sense for creating another installment. Ah, okay, they are actually doing that. You know what, that makes sense. But from the runner-up in their filmography, where's the money in the Cars movie? You know, why really make another one? Well, whilst the movies have made $1.4 billion, the toys, Toy Story ain't got nothing on this because they don't make real-to-model actual toys of their toy characters. With the Cars universe, they've crept over to $10 billion. I don't think I've even mentioned a movie that's connected to a 8-digit number before. But that's right, these movies are, in essence, the most successful toy commercial of all time. Because while the movies aren't exactly doing gangbusters, these toys wouldn't be selling half as well as they would be if they were selling them without the movies, obviously, right? Plus, they get to do all sorts of strange collabs like melting Lewis Hamilton down into a 4-wheeled vehicle and then pan him off as a toy, you know. It's all there. For a little bit of perspective here, Star Wars is often considered one of the most successful toy franchises of all time, right? And currently, before its Disney era, the all-time gross for Star Wars merchandise from 1977 to whenever the Disney acquisition was, that merchandise all combines to $12 billion. Now, post-Disney, that has ballooned to over $32 billion in Star Wars merch, which is insane and just shows the level of Disney's terrifying powers. However, $10 billion is still a lot from only 3 movies and some shorts and a whole collection of TV series that are kind of hard to keep up with. So you can see why Pixar's parent company may be pushing them to stay in the game and make a 4th movie. Talk about wow. However, as much money as Lightning & Co. have made, they've still always been the kind of ugly duckling of the Pixar canon. Is that fair to say? I mean, for a company that's won so many Oscars, Cars lost out to Happy Feet in 2007. Out of all of Pixar's generally high excellence output, the Cars franchise has always stood out as the one anomaly in that. Whilst the running joke about the formula is what if blank had feelings, which had an absolute field day when Inside Out came out, the writer's room at the studio are notoriously vigorous. They adhere strictly to 22 rules of storytelling that they have carried out through all of their films. Out of these, 2 stick out to me. There's, why must you tell this story? That's the heart of it. And what are the stakes? Give us a reason to root for the character. I raise these as some would argue that these principles take a lot more justification and explanation for the Cars movies, especially the second one. I mean, applying these 22 principles to Cars 2, of all things, does feel a little bit like a student absolutely winging a point in an exam with very little evidence to justify it. Sure, you could justify it in 9,000 words, but really, each of these principles should be answerable in one sentence. Give us a reason to root for the character. Carl wants to get his house to where his wife wanted to go before she died. Give us a reason to root for the character. Maynard has to make his accidental super spy gig work so he no longer looks stupid to others. Okay, you can summarize it in a sentence. That completely undermines that point, great. However, just because you can summarize it in a sentence doesn't make it a good sentence, you know? Thank you for making it halfway through this video. If you'd like to see more as we cover all announcement news a little bit late, because this was like announced a year ago, come subscribe. Or furthermore, if you hear about other movie announcements and like me to talk about it, tell me on my Discord server, linked down below. Since it is so early days as well, let me know of some speculative thoughts you would think Cars could continue into, since Cars 3 seems kind of definitive to me. But as you speculate on what is to come next, let's get back to the rest of the video. I just wanted to say thanks halfway. Regardless, there's no doubting that Cars 3, while still not exactly the height of Pixar, was a huge improvement on the maligned second venture. Going back to the roots of the original and focusing on Lightning's racing career, now at the tail end of it. For those who loved the original, as well as the predominantly child-based audience, and however much of a Venn diagram those two demographics come together, this has had a much better reception, though it didn't make as much money as the other two. The other crazy thing, which does kind of explain how these got made, is that this franchise is specifically the brainchild of former Pixar founder and boss, John Lasseter. Now, of course, a controversial figure who undoubtedly led the golden age of Pixar, as much as you don't really like that to be the note, but now more notably known for his harassment allegations. But after taking a break post Toy Story 2, whilst the next few movies were made by three of the all-time greats, Pete Docter, Andrew Stanton, and Brad Bird, this is what he returned to direct. His idea, based on his actual road trip, following kicking off Pixar's prominence in the way that he did back then. It's not hard to see how he likely got this movie through the system more easily than others would. However, I do wonder if he got any pushback on this. The takeaway from this is he was the all-powerful captain of the company, right? So there was probably no questioning that his talking car movie was brilliant, you know? Perhaps after Toy Story and Bug's Life, he could never surpass his what if this thing could talk format. I mean, going even further back, when Disney fired him for the first, but not last, time in the 80s, that was more about him pushing for CGI blending in animation on that occasion. The movie he was fired from was The Brave Little Toaster. I rest my case on his kind of format fetish. With that in mind, it's no surprise he wanted to get those cars talking as well. And alas, the nonsensical universe of Cars was made. However, now with Lasseter gone, Pixar actually have a dedicated creative director of the Cars franchise. His name's Jay Ward, and he's been involved in the franchise since the first one. He's been there for all three movies, the Cars tunes, and Cars on the Road. This guy is the Kevin Feige of the Cars-averse. No idea on the planes front, as that was Disney tunes. I'm sure he was at least consulted, like when Netflix made their Marvel shows. Yeah, I think that comparison works. Now, as the head honcho, Ward's recently provided an update on the direction of the franchise. According to CBR, who reported on this in December, he had this to say: "There are more Cars things brewing. I can't say much more yet. Cars has got a life that will keep going. I am working on some real fun projects right now that you will see in a couple of years. It takes us a while to make them." So, as you can see, wonderfully vague on the subject. However, it does confirm that movement does continue on the franchise, and not just in a fourth installment movie. This sounds like multiple projects if I ever heard one. In a time when Disney CEO Bob Iger has been surprisingly public about wanting to dial down on the sequels, which is absolutely baffling to hear from the Mouse House, this news is surprising. If that's a goal that they want, then they've already overfilled their sequel dance card, you know? They've already got Toy Story 5 and, from Disney Animation, Zootopia 2, plus 2 more Frozen sequels. And don't even get me started on the bloody MCU, technically every movie over there is a sequel. Regardless, let's just assume that dialing down is a classic empty promise, and the Disney sequel train will continue to grind on. We are currently walking straight into more sequels like Inside Out 2 on the Pixar front. And if you're making some of those ones out of some of Pixar's best projects, you may as well do another Cars. no one will mind. Most people only half register that those plane movies ever existed. I also quite like some of the ideas I've seen floating around the internet on where Cars 4 could go on a speculative front, with some saying that Cars 4 might have McQueen as more of like a mentor to some other character, which at least would make sense for his character and his arc. Because, like, you know, he is at the end of his career, so how are you going to make more out of that? It's not even a prequel. And not like I've actually seen these movies, but I almost feel like it could be like what they did with Rocky in the Creed movies. The old-timer training the rookie, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, Owen Wilson's only in his mid-50s, but I'm sure he can put a gruff voice on. Whatever the case, Lightning and Mater don't seem to be going anywhere, with more Cars movies and spin-offs in development. When will we find out what those are exactly remains to be seen. This is only the earliest of news, and then a poke that it still exists. Maybe it will expand more into things like a spin-off movie with new characters, make a proper Star Wars out of this joint with a whole new cast of characters to sell. You can smell the money from here. By the way, Cars is also a Mattel licensed property, and they're already making like 45 other movies under their brand, so maybe there's some weird overlap there that could happen in the future. Whatever the case, it's still early days, but Pixar are doing their old Pixar thing. They leaned on their sequels for a while, came off of them for a little bit, and now they're right back onto it again. Let's just see if they have any secrets up their sleeve. For now though, I think I'd best end it off there. My name's been Daz. You didn't really care. What are your thoughts on the continuing of the Cars franchise? Do you want there to be a fourth movie? Do you think the ending of Cars 3 was good enough? Could you watch where this road goes to the ends of the earth? I'd be genuinely curious to know. And I will see you in a little bit.